It has been 14 years since we got our last Final Destination movie, and I have a lot to say about it. Hello everyone, and welcome on That Horror Chick, my YouTube channel where we ramble about all things horror. My name is Angie, and I am a huge horror fan. From books to movies, I like it all. I was lucky enough to go to an early screening of Final Destination Bloodlines, and this was my most anticipated movie of 2025. I have been a huge fan of Final Destination ever since I was a teenager. It really was part of my youth. I think the first Final Destination movie that I actually saw was Final Destination 3, the one with the roller coaster accident. And ever since I saw that one, I have been hooked. The Final Destination franchise have become comfort movies to me. I just love them so much. As you guys know, if you have seen more videos of mine, I am a huge gore lover. And Final Destination definitely delivers this. Before I'm going to start my little review, please be beware that there can be spoilers. If you want to see the movie spoiler-free, then I recommend skipping this review. Plagued by a violent recurring nightmare, college student Stephanie returns home to find the one person that might help her break this cycle and save her family from a grisly dad. The film opens in 1960, where we follow Iris, who has a premonition of a tower collapse, after which she saves a lot of lives. But not only their lives, also the lives of their descendants. These survivors went on to have families, and their kids went on to have families. And none of these people were supposed to exist at all. Thanks to Iris, Dad has now a way bigger to-do list than he anticipated. He has to go down every bloodline to tie the loose ends and to clean up the mess. I like that Final Destination Bloodlines took the plot that we all know and love and gave it a little twist. The twist being that the survivors actually had children, and that these children were never supposed to exist. So Dad also goes after them. It still felt as if I was watching a Final Destination movie, but it was made a little bit more interesting with the whole bloodline twist. However, I have to admit that I was a little bit scared that it wouldn't feel like a Final Destination movie, because they were changing the plot that we love so much. It still pleasantly surprised me, and it definitely felt like I was watching Final Destination. There was enough gory, elaborate deaths to keep me entertained, and to have it feel like I was actually watching a Final Destination movie. However, it felt like they didn't lean fully into the Bloodlines idea. It just felt a little off to me. They could have done more with it. Like maybe have them search for other families. Or what I personally would have liked if Iris got way more involved than she did. There just was some suspense missing that I did feel in the previous movies. And with this suspense, I mean the feeling of dread that Final Destination is so known for. Some of the plot twists were also relatively easy for me to spot and point out. Personally, I would have liked a few more surprises here and there. The first half of the movie was pretty tame. They explained what was happening, filling the audience in as short a way as possible. It felt as if the producers assumed that we already knew the plot line, so they only explained the whole family tree thing. Personally, I didn't mind this too much, because it definitely helped making the movie a little bit more fast-paced. I think the first half of the movie wouldn't be as enjoyable if they went really deep in the general plot line about Dad coming after everyone. The foreshadowing in this movie is also done in complete Final Destination style. Lots of lingering shots and lots of silly coincidences with deadly aftermaths. I quite liked how they did this. It weren't the most cinematic shots, but it did a job of creating some suspense. Even though they did a good enough job creating suspense, I still miss it a little bit outside of the death scenes. In previous Final Destination movies, we were constantly guessing when a character would die. And in this movie you actually already saw it coming from miles away. This is what I meant about wanting a few more surprises here and there. I really would have liked if one or two deaths would have come out of nowhere. For example, Terry's death from Final Destination 1. This is the death with the bus, where she just gets smashed and smeared all over the pavement. A funny thing about this one though, they did give a little homage to it. That I really loved. Let's talk about the looks and the costumes. First of all, I really missed the grainy 2000s feeling. It was much better quality and it used a lot more CGI. Now I have seen a few interviews and know that they also use a lot of practical effects. But the CGI was quite noticeable to me. There is just something about the blue filter that hits the nostalgia factor for me. And that was kind of missing in this movie. But after my initial reaction to this, I didn't mind it as much and was still able to enjoy the movie. The costumes overall were pretty okay. Final Destination Bloodlines takes place in the modern day, so you just have clothing that you see every day. Something that I especially liked is that they showed a lot of technology. In Final Destination 5, most of the hints about the plot twist actually comes in the form of the technology that they use. For example, they use a lot of flip phones. This places Final Destination 5 in the past. And these little hints are what made the movie for me. I really like that they very clearly used modern day technology in Final Destination Bloodlines. This placed that movie in the modern times and really gave it that modern feel. So that was definitely something that stood out to me. The premonition takes place in the 60s and I quite like the costumes for this. Now I have to say I am not a huge historical fashion expert, so I'm not 100% sure if the costumes were accurate. But to me, someone with very little historical fashion knowledge, it did feel like the costumes belonged in the 60s. Except maybe for Iris, her dress. To me, this one felt like it belonged more in the 50s than the 60s. But nothing that felt like it didn't belong stood out in this scene. So that is good. Let's get into the character, shall we? Our main character is Stephanie, the college student that has the premonition. She inherited this premonition of her grandmother. She is played by Caitlin Santa Juliana, who I didn't know yet. I had a few issues with this character because she just felt a little bit bland to me. She was just missing like an outstanding character trait. I thought this was really a shame because due to that missing character trait, I didn't fully connect with Stephanie. That being said, she wasn't an unlikable character, especially with how hard she's trying to save her family. But I would have liked just a little bit more depth in my main character. Her brother Charlie was actually very likable. I really enjoyed his personality. Charlie is played by Theo Briones, and he is your typical teenager, which I found really enjoyable and felt very realistic to me. Another thing that Theo did really well was playing into the emotions of this character. You could really feel the despair about losing his family. Charlie was the character that had the most attachment to the other family members. He hangs out with his cousins, he talks a lot to his uncle, has a good relationship with his dad, so he really delivers that family connection. Theo Briones also played a character in Ratched, which is one of my favorite Netflix series. So I was very happy to see him in Final Destination Bloodlines. My favorite character was Eric, the alternative cousin. He was just so cynical and sarcastic. I absolutely loved it. And he really brought some much needed humor to the movie. I think he had the biggest impact on the overall vibe of the whole movie. He did a lot of silly things, but was also serious at times. His character felt as if it had the most depth. Also, he actually delivers one of the most emotional scenes in the movie. I didn't expect when first seeing this character that he was going to be the one that almost made me cry. Eric was definitely the most developed character of the whole family. He was played by Richard Harmon and I think he did a really good job. Of course, I cannot talk about the characters without mentioning William James Bloodworth. You probably knew that this character was coming. William Bloodworth is played by the late Tony Todd. May he rest in peace. Tony Todd is what I consider a horror legend, and he did an absolutely great job bringing closure to this character. We finally get some backstory on him, and let me tell you, I was gasping in the theater. The moment that they hinted at him, I was going crazy. I was having a ball. I was gasping, I was fangirling, all of the things. They gave him such a fitting backstory with giving him his own event to survive. I loved it. I just loved it to bits. I think that was my favorite part of the whole movie. What I really liked was that there were so many theories going on about it. We had the Angel of Death theory. We also had his own event theory. We also had him losing a loved one. There were so many possibilities, and I just didn't know which one it was going to be. So giving him his own event to survive was absolutely perfect. They brought the character to a close, and I was very happy that Tony Todd got a chance to do this. It really rounded up everything about William Bloodworth, and I was living for it. There are plenty of other characters as well. Of course, we have Iris, the grandmother who had the original premonition. She has gone batshit crazy, living in constant fear of death. Then we have Darlene and Howard, who are her kids. Then we have the cousins Julia and Bobby. These are the kids of Howard and the brother and sister of Eric. Lastly, we have Marty, the father to Stephanie and Charlie, and the ex-husband of Darlene. These characters didn't stand out to me as much, though I think that Bobby was the most developed out of this list. Again, they weren't dislikable characters, but definitely only there to be either killed off or add to the family drama. Of course, no scary movie is complete without a little bit of horror, and with Final Destination you know exactly what to expect. A lot of gore and very elaborate deaths. This franchise fully depends on the shock factor. We get a lot of violent and gory deaths in true Final Destination fashion. A lot of people getting stuck in weird positions. A lot of weird, silly coincidences that have a domino effect. You know, the good Final Destination stuff. I loved all of the deaths in this movie. I am a gore girly true and true, and Final Destination Bloodlines definitely delivered. The deaths entertained my squirrel brain and were gory enough to make me squirm a little. I am planning to make a complete separate video ranking all of the deaths in this movie. But I still want to tell you guys my favorite. And this was the MRI death. Now I had my fair share of medical procedures, so this one hit a little bit too close to home for me. I don't think that I can ever look at an MRI machine the same again. That scared the living daylight out of me. Most people in the theater were a little bit uncomfortable, and I think this is exactly what a horror movie is supposed to do. There weren't a lot of jump scares though, and I would like just 1 or 2 jump scares in the entire movie. It would have just given a little bit more variation. But with every Final Destination movie, you know it is going to be mainly gory deaths. So I wasn't disappointed at all. And with that, we have come to my final thoughts. I think that Final Destination Bloodlines was a really nice addition to the Final Destination franchise. In the end, I rated it 4 stars. I was personally hoping for a 5-star rating, but it just didn't feel like one. It simply missed a few notes for me, sadly enough. Which is a shame, but overall it was a very enjoyable movie. And they did a pretty good job delivering another installment of the Final Destination franchise after 14 years. Did it fully live up to the hype? Well, yes and no. The posters and the trailers gave me a different impression than the movie was. So the movie itself wasn't exactly as I expected it to be. For the first few minutes, this did make me enjoy it a little bit less. But after I got over my initial feelings about this, I didn't mind it as much. Final Destination Bloodlines missed some of the suspense that I was expecting, and the characters felt a little bland at times. But the characters weren't as bland as in Final Destination 4, so in the end it wasn't that bad. The whole bloodline thing made sense to me, and it definitely added a whole new vibe to the "that is coming for you" thing. Final Destination Bloodlines did miss a few chances here and there. For example, they had the perfect setup to bring Kimberly back from Final Destination 2. In the end, they didn't do this. The moment that they name dropped her, I was completely hyped. I was losing it in the middle of the theater. But sadly, I was left hanging. This was just such a perfect setup to bring her back. And I really would have liked to see her back into the movies. She is one of the only survivors of a Final Destination movie, if we don't count the extra content of Final Destination 3, that is. However, they did bring Bloodward back, and that already made me very happy. Some people were saying that the ending was a little weak, but I definitely don't agree with that. It was very much a classic Final Destination ending. Every movie in the franchise has ended with a similar scene. In Final Destination 1, Carter gets hit by a billboard. In Final Destination 2, the kid that was saved from the news van gets blown up by a barbecue. In Final Destination 3, we have the train derailment. In the Final Destination, we have the car crashing into the coffee shop. And in Final Destination 5, we of course have Flight 180. Every movie in this franchise has ended with one big accident that killed most or all of the survivors. So the ending of Final Destination Bloodlines felt like a very classic Final Destination ending to me. It has happened in every movie, though I have to say I can understand why people would think it was a little bit weak. After all, the surviving characters are killed off pretty fast, and quite in a little bit of an underwhelming way. But this has been a recurring theme for every last scene in the whole franchise. So I was kind of expecting it. In the end, I really enjoyed Final Destination Bloodlines, and it will probably become a comfort movie for me. I am sensing a theme here. If a movie has a lot of gory deaths, it is probably one of my comfort movies. I will be doing a separate video of my tier list of all the Final Destination Bloodline deaths. And I will also be doing a separate video on my top 10 of the whole franchise. They are some of my comfort movies, and I would just love to talk more about them. Have you already seen Final Destination Bloodlines? And what did you think about it? Leave it in a comment down below because I'm very curious to your opinions. If you want to stay up to date about all the movies that I watch, you can follow me on Letterboxd. I also have an Instagram where I post about the movies that I'm watching now and again. Next to Instagram and Letterboxd, I also have a Blue Sky account. Here I post every movie that I'm currently watching, and you can follow along with my fangirling about it. And with this, we have come to the end of this video. I hope that you like this video. Please leave a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe on my channel if you haven't done that yet. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!